Your media, where you are.
There are so many demands on you. Demands at home, in the boardroom, and in the bedroom. You have to be jack of all trades, wearing a different hat when the moment arises. You're on all the time, always on the clock, always catching up. Take care of you. Introducing Your Media, your podcast network that meets you where you are, when you need it, at your time, in your space, when you feel like it. You come first. Your Media, where you are. With every moment, you are creating an impression. Make sure it's an impression by design. This is the Transcript with Tshiamo.
And here we are, second episode of the Transcript. Welcome. It's with me, Tshiamo A. In studio today, I have, I actually never thought I'd ever get to this point. Let me introduce you to my guest for this week. I'm joined in studio by Katlego Mabusela. Okay, so I'm going to give you the bio, right? Which is so long and mouth.
Are you going to do a whole bio? Wow.
Would you rather not?
Well, hey, listen, I'm just a guest. I'm going to sit here.
That's
what I'm going to do.
Also, I don't want KPI, when KPIs come here and then... So start again. In studio today, I'm joined by Katlego Mabusela, who is an Afro-futurist entrepreneur. Futurist entrepreneur. We need to touch on that.
Okay.
Enterprise development and life coach, professional speaker, radio presenter, and author to Bounce Forward, the comeback code for all seasons.
Hi.
I think let's start. First, I want to touch on this. What is a Afro-futurist entrepreneur?
It's just a very fancy way. A very fancy way of saying that I believe in the future of our continent. I'm positive. Like if I was a gambling man, let me put it that way. I'm like, yeah, let's go all in on Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, so now that we have that out the way, and I hope someone understands what that is, I think let's just dive in and just take us back to actually understanding who Katlego is, where Katlego is from. You're already tearing up.
No, man, it's just I got some in my eye.
That's what they say. So yeah, let's start with that. Just let us know who Katlego is.
Okay. So Katlego is a son first and foremost, right? I'm a brother to two amazing young men, very much approaching their 30s now. Aha! Y'all used to laugh at me. And I'm an uncle, thanks to them. I am also a fiance. I'm human. I'm an entrepreneur, man. I'm like, like that's the thing. I think, growing up in the country that we are growing up in or living through, and it's also a privilege to be South African in that sense that we grew up living in the dichotomous world. We've got dichotomous. No, but it's a reality. Like we grew up in a world of lack, right? By virtue of the history of our country, but we also grew up in a world where we saw opportunity being presented to the generation that came just before us, like that post-apartheid sort of era. And then, of course, ours was to take it to the next level. So for me, I'm just a guy who's always been trying to figure out what my contribution to that equation is going to be, but also make an impact in the world, man. Like, but on a very basic level, how do I put it? Non-superficial, if you would. Like, I just want to matter. I want to matter. I want the time between my birth and my death to have meant something to someone, and that thing to be a positive thing. Yeah.
Okay. So I think you've actually motivated why the topic or the title for this podcast
Sure.
specifically for me would be a man on a plan. Because that's what I think of it. Just think you have a plan in mind, and life is throwing you curveballs, but still you've managed to find your way.
Yeah.
And when I touch on those as we go on, but I think more than anything, you're literally a man on a plan. And you hear people saying a man with a plan.
Yeah.
There's a difference with having a plan and actually executing it. And I think you are that. You're an executor more than a sayer.
That's such a beautiful compliment. Like I actually, when you said man on a plan, I thought of it differently. In my head, man on a plan was, the plan is not necessarily mine always, because anybody who says they always know what they're doing is lying. I think we all know. We're trying to figure it out.
I saying that to someone this past week. I'm like, because I want to be the best father. I'm like, listen, every parent in the world is winging it. Yours is just to wing it in the right direction. You just pray that
and your intentions, right? Like your intentions, you're like, I want to be Jesso, take the wheel. That's all I need.
You never know how it's gonna end. You
Exactly.
Just keep it. Yeah.
So I guess that's exactly the same thing. And whether it's in business, whether it's in love, whether it's in sort of our personal lives, finances, okay, some of these things require that you do have an actual plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we make these amazing plans, and life being what it is, it's always going to knock you off your plans, or it's going to say, I see your plans. I raise you the work that comes with getting to those plans, those big dreams. So I am on a plan, and I think the plan is the sum total of my own ambition, those around me support, my parents' wishes for me, hopes and dreams for me. I think also the greater power, whether it's God, Allah, whatever it is that you refer to that greater being as, their plan for me. So it's a combination of those things. And selfishly, and I think naively as well, and immaturely, sometimes I feel and think I should have control of that plan. Come to learn that I scarcely do.
Okay, so let's talk about the control of the plan.
Yeah.
Right? Growing up.
Yep.
You're the first born son.
Yes, ma'am.
Take me back to what was the plan for that boy? What did he actually want to be? And is he happy with where he is?
That's such an unfair question. Are you happy with who you are? Sure. Who did I want to be when I was growing up? Michael Jackson.
Not an MJ.
I'm telling you, a whole MJ.
Not an MJ with a plastic slide.
Listen, Michael Jackson. So
I feel like, I don't want to say what I'm going to say. Actually, nowadays on Twitter, people have commented.
They're going to come for you.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say you're a bit on the other side.
Oh, wow. Black and color. No, see what had happened was, I remember, I don't know, how our parents used to play. My parents loved soul music and I guess R&B of the day. And when Michael was Michael, he was Michael, right? And he'll forever be Michael.
When Michael had an African nose.
Yeah. I didn't want to say it that way, but I mean. So I remember watching Michael, one of his tours, on VHS. And then I perform
It's a lot about your age,
Katlego, not about really TDK.
Why is that?
You don't know. HB. You know about it too, so don't try to act funny. If she don't know about the HB, she's too young.
She's too young.
She's too young. But on a more serious note, I was watching him on tour, and I remember this moment so clearly. I think he landed in Moscow or something, but one of these European countries. And obviously they show you him going up to the concert, like the streets are full. Oh, Michael, we love you. Oh my God, oh my God. Michael gets there, blah, 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 blah. And then there's that moment where he comes up from underground.
Mm-hmm. And this is where he jumps on stage in the gold.
And he just pauses.
Mm-hmm.
Yo!
I think he was the first to actually invent that whole effect.
Yeah, then they ejected all of them.
Yeah, and then Chanel also came.
Michael's that's a goat. Right? And I remember seeing this lady losing her mind. Like, she had to be hospitalized. Like, she got taken out on a stretcher at a concert, not because of the stampede, but because she was so excited.
Standard procedure for Michael.
I was like, how? He hasn't even sung a word. Like, he just turned his head, and this lady's like, That guy was the original pastor.
Yeah.
Fire!
Like, just telling, he hasn't even. But also, I think at the time, and you're obviously talking about when he now had his head a bit straight.
Yeah.
So already him popping up, he already had the effects of like his weight.
Yeah.
So when he flicks the head, there's that.
Bona.
You know.
Maybe it's me.
Not talking to my
All that.
Okay.
But anyway, we digress. So Michael.
And that's the issue about this. I also forgot to mention, sorry, because I'm just, Katlego is also the co-founder or the founder of your media.
Thank you.
Which is where you're broadcasting from.
Where you are.
And if I don't do a good job here, my KPI is at stake.
Contracts are cancelled. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. No pressure though. I mean, no pressure whatsoever. But so I see Michael have this moment, and this lady have this moment. And the one thing in my sort of childlike mind was, wow, I want that. I don't know what that was. And obviously, when you see it as a child, you're like, I want to be a singer. I want to be a performer. I want to tour world. You remember when they used to do world tours? Oh my God, when world tours were actually world tours.
Yeah.
Oh,
which never involved South Africa.
Yeah. We've got our own history, right? But watching that, and I was like, I want to have that level of impact on people's lives. And I think for me, having understood it as an older sort of person, it has a lot to do with the need to matter and have impact at such a level that a person will pass out. You know, it's not a God complex. It's nothing like that. It is just that whatever it is I've done in the world, I've done it so well and so good, and I've put so much of me in it that somebody would lose their minds like that. Anyway, I was a child then. I didn't know how to get there. And I thought politics was the original route, believe it or not. My mom, when I was growing, my mom was a really great speaker. She was an orator, like village cat.
Not a matrix.
Hey, not oracle, orator.
Orator.
But she kind of instilled that in me, right? Just by virtue, I guess maybe seeing a good family meeting, your mama. And then it's something that stuck with me. And so even in primary school, I was always long story cut short is that kind of set me on this path that one of the ways that one, and I think also because our country was going through a very highly politicized time, that politics might be the direction I was meant to take.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I matriculated, initially I was supposed to be studying politics, philosophy, and economics. PPE, baby, PPE. Why do you laugh? I was on my way. I was like, I'm going to be a politician. You know, I didn't necessarily understand the mechanics behind politicians.
Yeah, no, you said PPE, and to me, I'm thinking the billions thing.
Personal protective. No, I had nothing to do with that. Let the record state. Okay?
I don't know. I mean, this just came up.
So we move on. We move on. No masks were involved in the building of your media. But yeah, no. So applied to University of Cape Town. I remember I also applied. Applied to Boston, University of Boston, Massachusetts, because I'd always been a bursary child. So my high school was bursaries, and there's a whole story that comes with how those bursaries came about. But I was an academic. I was a nerd. I mean.
For those watching on YouTube, I'm sure you'll agree.
Wow, sure, okay.
I mean, you try with the cap and that, but it's still very nerdy.
Really?
Now you look like the gamer. You know?
You can't please everybody.
Pop culture.
You can't please everybody. But anyway, long story short, again, like I applied to them. I get accepted to UCT. Unfortunately, at the time, I wasn't able to secure a bursary. And my folks couldn't afford it, so I ended up settling for, because also it would mean that I'd have to live in Cape Town. In high school, I was working for Truworths whilst I was still in high school as well, so I was kind of paying for a lot of my own stuff, and I thought the only place they could transfer me was to Joburg, funny enough, for Truworths. So I'd also applied to UJ, and I got into the politics course there. And that's how I ended up in Joburg. 2005, I come to Joburg for the first time in January of that year. And what an eye-opener. Wait, what an eye-opener. Josie, yeah. But as soon as I land here, the worst part was the job that I had to do is my technically casual job. Mm-hmm. I get to the store, I'm like, I'm here. Well, it was more like, you know, like, and they're like, who the hell are you? Yeah. I don't eat. What do you mean? Don't know.
They're literally like men's clothes on your leg.
Yeah, like, oh, how can we help you, sir? And yeah, I just have to start hustling from there on in. But yeah, I got to UJ, tried to do the politics thing, but I soon realized that it wasn't like they make it look on TV. You know, you're not always just giving speeches and cutting ribbons.
Wait a minute. Did you tell me you actually thought you would find yourself on a podium just like overnight? Is that?
Honey, you don't see. Listen. So what I saw in
like that's what I need to understand. That you thought you were literally going to be on a podium saying, "I have a dream."
I thought it was similar to that. Like I had a very naive understanding of what politics was. I didn't understand that you have to fight for policy, you have to write policy, you have to go through all of that. In my head, it was just about giving big speeches, right? Stirring people up, having a cause, and then getting applause. Okay. Like that was
the main part is the applause.
The applause. I was like, yo, I'm about to applause. And I think that's also where my radio voice kind of came from, because obviously I had to have a voice that resonates. Those kinds of that's a serious matter. This is my life here. But yeah, that's how I ended up in Joburg at UJ studying politics, and then
So I want to touch on this, and this is a conversation we've had.
Sure.
You mentioned you literally just glanced through your high school. But I feel like a lot of character building took place in there. And for someone listening who's going through it, I think that story is the crux of what brought you here. Can you just share it with everyone?
Yeah. There's so many dynamics that come with my high school life. So just to create a bit of context, I went to primary school, Katlego. Right, go Peps Mateo primary school. Shout out to Peps. School of 300 students all in all at the time. Obviously collocation in, but it's a Model C school, quote unquote collocation in. You know what I mean? Then I get into Pretoria Boys High School, Model C school in the fullest sense. Pupil count of 1,500, 301 in grade 16, like first year of Form 1, Form 1. Form 1. Let's just go with Form 1 so we can get the numbers right. I don't even know which part of the story to tell, but I had a complex. And that complex was I know my background. I want to change the situation going through because that wasn't healthy either, right? A combination of abuse, a combination of a couple that were both broken, and in being together were cutting each other with their broken edges. And the children in that environment were having to live through that experience. And that's my brothers and I. And as the older brother, I always wanted to protect my brothers. And I remember very, very many situations where I would take them to Kokamarina. I could always, those passages, Bukas, all the houses had these long passages. Well, not long subjective. Different problems for different people. But I'd take them to that back room, and I used to try and entertain them, and I'd make the entertainment loud so they couldn't hear what was happening outside. But it's also tragic, and it's an experience that's lived by too many children. And to think that it's 2021, there's still children who are going through that. A younger me used to judge the parents in the equation very harshly, but I also understand that they are human beings that are broken themselves. They're not innately choosing to be evil, not evil or wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're broken.
Yeah.
So there's a whole conversation to be had about that. But the point is, my motivation was that even in primary school, like I excelled. I was, the head boy of the primary school and deputy. Well, I was actually the deputy. Ended up taking over as the head. So
of course, yeah.
It's a
whole thing. I mean,
yeah. I don't mean head boy.
But and at that time, you literally were a head boy.
Sure. Anyway, we move the story along.
So the part where I wanted to get to is it's just that whole, you mentioned that you walked from Pretoria Boys to Silver Lake. Silverton,
yeah. So
and if you for me, I mean, I studied at Tux, so I know the distance from just the actual school to the main gate at Pretoria Boys, which is on its own just a track.
Yeah.
How you covered that and still had enough chutzpah to even get to your destination. I want to know, what are you saying to yourself? And because I feel like, or I would rather interpret it and say, to me, you'd have to have some conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I mean, you're in high school and you're in this privileged school where kids are being fetched by their parents, some are in boarding school, you know, you all look good in similar uniform. But
we're living through very different experiences.
You know, they don't even know like your story.
Hey.
So what were the conversations you were having with yourself during your walk?
So let me create the context for how, before I get to the conversation, the context is this, right? That I get to Boys High. It's a very different world, Model C school, Model C kids. But I do what I know how to do, which is to get involved, because it's always worked for me in primary school. But also I'm getting involved, I think, on a secondary level, because it keeps me away from home, that toxic environment where there's always fighting, always shouting, always whatever, right? But I'm also trying to do so well so that I can pull my brothers out of that toxic environment, pull my mom out of that toxic environment. So I get involved, I am in the library, I'm part of the choir, I'm part of all these cultural things, nothing sporty for reasons I cannot explain. The official reason will be...
Those watching via YouTube will know why.
Don't be that person. but yeah, I'm involved, debate, society, all these things, I'm doing all of that. The thing about this thing is those things are extramural activities. And so obviously it means that I stay after. You know, some like Patco at the time. Basically, like, yeah, you used to remember.
You can't trust Patco like even till this day.
Can I tell you something? I was in an incident where the whole bus burnt down. Ask me about it another time. I kid you not. People who hey, anyway, enough about Patco. So I'm very involved, which means if anything, if I need to be picked up, my parents must drive from Harangu to come and get me. But I also know that if that happens, it's going to start a fight in the house, you know. So I try to avoid all of that. I strategically become part of the library because I know that the library, if I rise up the ranks quickly, I get access to the key to the library, which means if I've got the key to the library, I lock up and I open up in the morning. That means anything that happens at night is up to me, right? So what I used to do is some of the nights, I used to sleep in the school library. And then I'd be up very early before everybody arrives, and I'd make sure that the library looks fine. And initially I used to use the Pretoria News. And you know, Pretoria, so it also had Beeld as Dikobo, right? Because I'd sit, there's no bed in the library, there's like those couches, like one couch, so I'd sleep on that couch and I'd use that. So, but those are the nights when I couldn't do that consecutively because I'd have to go and get clean and whatever. Some of those nights, when choir would end at 9, I would...
At night?
At night. I would walk to my aunt's house, which is in Silverton. Now, you have to be strategic about it because when it all ends, we're all sitting around outside waiting for our parents, right? And my story to everybody used to be, I know they're coming. They come after, they're coming from far. So I'd let all my choir mates leave. And after my choir mates would leave, then I'd start walking. And obviously you start to develop tricks. Now I'd start to pack my PT t-shirt because it was white, so I could be seen at night. I'd keep that in my bag. I'd have my sneakers with as well. And yeah, I'd start walking. And that was about a 4.5 hour walk. I'd leave about 9:30 because normally everybody was picked up about 9:30, 1:45 in the morning. I'd be arriving in Silverton.
How old are you?
Form 3, so what is that? I don't know. What
grade 8 is Form 1.
Yeah.
Form 2, grade 9, grade 3, so probably like 16.
16, yeah. Weirdly, those walks were also very therapeutic because at night it is just but you and your thoughts. Okay, there are voices that you're hearing, obviously, because you're very aware of what's happening in your surroundings. But it also showed me that, like, you know, it won't kill you. I get what in saying that it's a bit careless, but I didn't die from the walk itself. Obviously, it was a dangerous thing to do. But I would walk many nights. I mean, it became my reality to the point where I did sort of discover these tricks on how to get through the walk itself. And the night I got busted. Whew.
The conversation you have. The conversation.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
yes.
the conversation I have with myself. Aski, sorry. I can't remember verbatim, obviously, but it would be all sorts of things. It would be me reflecting on the day. It'll be moments of, do I really belong here, and why? Why is it so hard for me to just be in school and just be involved? Because obviously, when I leave, I just watched my friends getting picked up in Range Rovers and whatever. And when the doors opened, they were received with what looked like love.
Yeah.
You know, all of those warm things. And for me, just to be where they were, I was now going to have to do a 4.5-hour walk. And it was obviously across all seasons. So in winter, it's bitterly cold between 9 o'clock and 1 a.m. in the morning, you know. And so those were the questions I was having. But one of the things I remember, and it served me later on in another part of my story, I guess, which was just to say one more step. It was like just one more kilometer, not step, but kilometer. Because if I had tried to think about how far I was walking, I would have turned back.
100%.
Like you said, just going from the main building to the gate,
Yes.
it's a walk in itself, right?
Correct.
So I wasn't even going to try and put that in my head. I was just, what's it called? Not compartmentalized, but like I cut up the walk. I was like, okay, if I just get to that thing, and then I get to the thing, I'm like, okay, cool, got into the next thing. And let me get to that thing. Until I've gotten so far that turning back is further than going forward. And there was one milestone in particular in that walk. There's like a toll gate as I'm about 3 hours.
Not a toll gate. Like,
yeah, there's like a toll gate. No, to be honest with you, also, as much as I knew that something about it was abnormal, it was what my situation was. Right?
Yeah.
So I had no context outside of that to look at that and go, whoa. Only as an older person understanding, like, okay, maybe that's not the most normal thing. But then you put that into context, and then there's kids who are walking 40 Ks and in a day. So get to the toll gate, and I'd be like, okay, we're on the home straight. And
So the reason why I asked you that question is because, and I'm glad you mentioned it, is the fact that when we had this conversation, I remember going home and I thought to myself, like, your story is so important in life, general, because it's just like sometimes in situations you'll be in a point where you are not where you want to be, but you've come too far from where you started. You know, that the only thing you need to do is just keep going. And as you said there, that you break down the walk to say, if I can get to that McDonald's, if I can get to that toll gate, you realize that you're closer to your destination than you were at your, what is it?
Your point of departure.
Your point of departure. And I think in life, people tend to not look at their situations like that. Like we tend to focus more on the point of departure to say, but I'll never get to this point because I'm from there.
Yeah.
And you forget that if you just break it down and say, if I can just get from that departure, if I can just get to this pasta shop down the road, I'm not where I started.
Yep.
But
Yep.
you know what I mean? And that's why I think we're having this conversation, and hence why the title, A Man on a Pin, because you are consistently trying to step forward away from where you started.
Where I started. And I think a lot of us are trying to do that. And what we do at the same time is that we lose context. We lose context of how far we've come. You know, it's funny you brought that up at a point which I was talking about my high school life, because there's a guy I met in high school, Greg Mulitsu. And if he ever watches this and listens to this, I don't know if he ever knows that this moment we had this impact. There's a song that he introduced me to, and the lyrics go something to the effect of, I've come too far from where I started.
Mary.
Mary.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody told me the road would be, oh man. The day he introduced me to that song, when I walked away from him, I cried. Because I was like, yo, it can't be too well. But we do lose that context. And I think a large part of it also has to do with our expectations from society, and we reflect, who we are and where we are based on what society says we should be at a certain time. And myself included, even now, people will see the gains, they'll see, the things we celebrate. We celebrate your media, we celebrate Tshiamo doing great work on this platform.
The temper raised already?
Said it to the wrong person, that's what I did.
And it's on record.
Hey, yeah.
Thank you.
But in my head, I've got an expectation of where I want to be. I'm 34, looking at 35, and there's a list of things I wanted to do before I was 35. And some of them I have, but there are a lot that I haven't yet. But I think what I am grateful for is who I'm becoming. I think I've started to value more who I'm becoming on this journey than I value what I have. And so maybe similarly to that walk, the longer I walked, the stronger I became. With each kilometer. Come on with it. But yeah, literally with each walk, the stronger I became, or not each walk, but with each step and each kilometer. And it showed up in my life. It shows up in my life today. Entrepreneurship as my chosen career is one that requires that I get stronger. I'm stronger today than I was when I started my first business. When I had my first failure, when I had my first, when I got winded for the first time, got thirsty. All of those things, if you think about this metaphor of walking, you improve because you continue on the journey, you get stronger, and you build up what's called your conditioning. And so we should look at that and think to ourselves and question if we become stronger, become better on our journey, irrespective of whether the circumstance around us has necessarily changed.
So, okay.
So what time?
You this is your show now.
I apologize.
Okay, so earlier on you mentioned, at 16 you are doing this long walk.
Yeah.
Then you get to varsity.
See what the politics thing was. Long walk, 16 minutes.
Can I finish?
Okay.
So at 16 you are, you have this hard time. But cut to age 23.
Yes, ma'am.
And you're a millionaire.
Well,
living in a loft. I want to understand. So now I need to understand how you've now lived two extremes of life. Because now you're 23, you are nowhere near walking to McDonald's. Never mind, ground floor.
Yeah. 17th floor now.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
And now, what are the lessons that you learned leading you to the 17th floor? And what are the lessons you learned during your phase
in the
17th floor?
That reality is what you make it. I think one of the things that when you come from nothing, or actually not even nothing, because that sounds like you come from nothing. Where we come from often is our point of reference, right? So it's very hard without exposure to see a different world and to create a different world. For me, one of the things I always laugh about, I was like, the day I found out about DSTV, and back then it was Mnet, and it was an open time. And I was like,
why am I exposing my age? God.
No, but think about it. Open time was literally, and they opened the window to a world you didn't know.
It was literally 5 to 6.
No. And then after that, you try and hopefully you could hack open time with the you'd be standing there, come on, with the intent of trying to but
I'm not partaking in this.
But it's true. It's true. But
and the funny thing is they would have that ad to say up next. And you're like,
that's the thing.
That's what I want.
They play with your emotions. We need to have a whole inquiry into that. It messed with our heads. But that open time thing for me showed me a world that SABC wasn't showing me. SABC would reflect, or CCTV back then, would reflect the world I was in to me. And then I would have that 30 minutes where I would see a world that I could get to. So I became very obsessed with the other part, that 30 minutes. And I try to pry that window wide as much as possible. And what I used for me was, because I was in the library, it was books. And then it became, when YouTube and things like that became available as platforms. And I got tapped into worlds, Tony Robbins and things like that. And they started to speak about how your reality is what you make it, and, belief systems and that whole world. And so what took me from, having done the high school walk and living that way to a place where I'm on the 17th floor in an apartment block that I could only imagine myself living in, with marble floors and a facade of windows just looking out into the city at night, was just prying that window open and then stepping into that world, because that became my reality. And so I forced my everyday life to now mirror that. Like literally, I remember the day I went in to get that apartment, I was driving a Golf Chico at the time, right?
Not a Chico,
Hey, come on now. I had this pages that I'd taken out of a Habitat magazine, I think it was, right? Torn them out. One was stuck on my passenger side, my driver's side, and one was stuck right on my hooter. Because in my head, I was like, I need to booby trap my life for success. I need to keep myself in a constant state where if I drop out of that focus, I'll see these things. And so it was clumsy, but they were stuck on.
I'm actually thinking it's quite brilliant.
And
I never do it now, especially in my account.
Excuse us.
We have interest. Instagram, Pinterest for that.
Right, but I mean, we didn't have that. That's when we had Nokia. I can't even remember now. But yeah, that I literally had to live in that world whilst I was doing what I was doing in this current world. I used to, the reason I ended up in that position was because I built a certain business at that time, and it grew relatively quickly. And although, it achieved its level of success, it ultimately went into liquidation. And I'm always open about that because that was a learning curve for me as well. But in the building of that business, I used to take my team and we'd do what I call dream building sessions. And we would, I kid you not.
Is this your reflexing?
No. This is before even the money came. I think it precipitated the money.
Okay.
Right? Because we would go to, I remember going to Bentley in particular. Oh, Continental GT. Beautiful, in love with that car, right? And we went to the Bentley store, and it was still when it was in William Nicol. And we would literally, the only reason we're there is so that we can know what the smell of Bentley leather is. Because no one in my family has ever had Bentley leather. So I'm chasing this thing from a place of lack. I wanted to attract myself to it from a place of knowing. Like my system must be familiar. Hey, one time, but even just naturalizing myself to it as a norm. Because what I've noticed when I was growing up in high school was that my expectations of life versus the expectations of my counterparts who grew up in this world of abundance was that abundance was a norm. It was their zero. Yes. My zero was below that. And that's the thing. I used to get annoyed with them, and I was very jealous because I was young and my emotions, I was not mastering my emotions, right? But that's their reality. Their parents had worked hard to afford them that as the point of departure. So I had to kick my mental state into the point where at least they self-jute.
Were you aware that you were now operating at their parents' level and not their level?
No, not necessarily. I was still hustling.
No, but what I'm saying is, you just said now that the parents have built such a great platform for them, right? And you are now having to work on yourself and bring yourself to that. So I'm saying, do you understand? Did you ever realize that your mindset is more of the parent to say? Oh,
I hear what you're saying. No, I didn't see it that way. I just saw it. I was very self-involved, very selfish. Kimo. I was like, me right now, I need to kick it up a notch. We did not start on the same playing fields, so let me get onto the playing fields. So, and maybe that was a good thing. That ignorance gave me a hunger that if I'd been too, I'm woke or I'm enlightened, I maybe would have not hustled as much, not have been as hungry as much, not have consumed as much content, not have applied as much of the content as possible. Because also I think what made the difference was that I did a lot of application. I actually went and did those things. I pushed myself to become that person. And sometimes to my own fault, because I damaged relationships on that journey. I entered into very transactional relationships because I was only in relationship with you if you could live up to my standards. So it was never a matter of accepting you for who you are and let's meet at that place. It was, this is who I am, this is what I'm called to do, this is where I'm going. You're either on this journey with me or you could find the next bus.
Business class.
It was crazy. Like even my hangouts, I insist. I insist.
Sometimes you were that guy.
I was too much.
What Versace shirt in a club?
No, I wouldn't be Versace shirt. Come on, no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't take
I
it.
totally in t-shirt. Oh,
No, so
Entreprenuer.
here's my thing. My thing was, why are we in a club? That same ticket I spent money in a club, I could have spent that money on a ticket to a seminar. All of which is very true.
True.
And I still believe that now,
Yeah.
right? But I think I had an unhealthy level of, not commitment to it, almost obsession with it,
Okay.
which meant I didn't have balance. So
Okay.
So eventually I had a regression as well. There was a moment where I found myself in the club
Yeah.
with the bottles, popping them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why am I here? I don't know why I'm here.
It feels good.
It feels good. I'm not, man. They're like, oh, Gigi, what this is not why you started this journey. So I just think I needed a balance. But it's because I was just so, like, I was so hungry for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
You
didn't even
mentioned
answer
that
your
you were-
question.
Like, yeah, you're not trying to answer my question.
I'm sorry.
But so now you just touched on the fact that you're saying you were just so hungry for it.
Yeah.
Now I want to ask, the day you woke up and you realized that hunger had now led you to a point where you're losing it.
Yeah.
Were you about to go back to, like, you had a full plate of food, now you're going back to no food. That day when you realized my business gone, what is going through your head?
It was moments. So it wasn't one defining moment, there were a series of defining moments. So it wasn't like, oh, got it, change of way, boom, boom, boom. It was, oh, got it, hint, behave, fall back to bad habits. So it's been a series, but I've gotten better at each of the times when I've sort of had my wobbles, if you'd call them that. What was going through my head? I knew it. One of the biggest challenges I personally had to deal with has been silencing the voice in my head that says, of course you're gonna fuck up. Who do you think you are? You're not enough. People, a very select group of people know quite how shy, introverted, but more so I had a deep desire for validation from the world, right? Largely because of how I was nurtured, I suppose, in my family, right? And so I needed to prove myself. My big drive, like I said, was to matter, to prove myself. The fact that I was trying so hard to prove myself probably suggests that I didn't believe I was enough to begin. Right? So when moments of failure would happen, my mind would go, oh, of course, we expected this. But well done, you tried really hard, eh? Oh, well done, Casta. We're so proud of you.
Very proud.
So that's what would be going on in my head. And then I would have to go to the books I've read, to the audiobooks I've listened to that say that belief is not one that you that serves you. It's one that you inherited. You need to erase it, and you have to do exercises, like the simplest of things, repeating things to myself in the mirror. All those little things are what would keep me from going down the slippery slope of potential depression. One of my hardest moments in life was when that business went into liquidation. My identity was very boiled. I didn't finish my undergrad. I dropped out of UJ or RAU at the time for politics, went to WITS to do music, dropped out of that, right? Went to 947, then called Highveld, got fired from there once upon a time as well, went back again, but then I left the second time. It's been a lot that's happened, right? But in all of that happening, I lose this thing that is the one thing I've gotten right, and I've gotten it right so well. People wanted to hear my story. I got invited to become a speaker. That's how I got into the speaking world. And all of those things start from that moment. I've now effed it up. It's gone. I'm sitting in the commissioner's office in the CBD, and they're, dealing with this situation, and I'm scared. I'm alone. My business partner, going through her own experience, is sitting on the other end of the table with her lawyer. I probably should have brought a lawyer. So
Why didn't you know that?
I didn't know better. But also the truth is I couldn't afford one now because the way I set up my life was that a lot of the assets and anything that was owned by the entity and never by me, which I thought was a good way of doing it, but which is to some degree, but there's unnecessary things. Structuring. Yeah, wealth protection.
That's how we do it.
So when all of that was happening, I was like, I'm nothing. Because I don't introduce myself to Tshiamo as I, Katlego CEO or ... you know. I'm actually even afraid of you asking, so what do you do? Which is a general conversation we have in Joburg. Like, hey, cool, as we settle down into it. So what do you do, KG? Because what do I do? I fail at business. That's what. Get out of here, Joe. What am I going to say to you? Tell me what I'm going to say to you.
I was about some money. I can tell you what it was.
Nobody wants that.
100%.
Nobody cares about what you want.
100%.
You know. So deep depression. That was bad. That was really.
So in that time, because here's one thing, I'm like, how did the guy who had all the posters and stuff in his car and constantly manifesting, now lose that part of himself at that point where it should have been very crucial? Because now, as you're saying, you're sitting at the commissioner's office, and you're thinking, I'm a failure. Where's that guy who used to now have this thing? Say, okay, fine, we're not there, but there's still something else.
I think, and maybe I misrepresented that in the sense that guy is there. That's the guy sitting in that seat. The emotions will happen. It's what you do with them that's the distinction, right? So I'm feeling the emotions. The only thing that actually put me in a position where I didn't consider taking my life or going that route with it was the very fact that I had done all of that stuff. So I had been conditioned through repeated actions and watchings and consumptions of content and practices of certain things that when the slump hits, this is what you do. And so whilst we can't control our emotions, as in we can't control the trigger of the emotions,
yes,
right? But we can control what we do with those emotions. So when it happened, that was the trigger, that was the moment. Oh my God, I'm experiencing this. But as it's happening, then I have to go into taking control of it. And I could only take control of it because I had done the work prior. To answer your question, that Katlego was the guy sitting there. He was the guy who was scared. And then after he was being scared, he was like, what can happen? What you won't do? I will come for you.
Okay. Before we wrap up, I'm going to wrap up just now. ZACP.
Yo, didn't see that one coming. Wow. Okay.
What?
Yeah, continue.
Yeah, it's there. That's where we are.
All right.
Hashtag.
She went there. Is that it?
Yeah, I need you to where?
Okay. I had never, actually, let me not lie. I was about to lie, not because Obama, but because I'd forgotten. I remember reading Dr. Mamphela Rampela's books, right? And there was a call to action. I don't want to say arms because it wasn't a call to arms for young South Africans who are the benefactors or beneficiaries of this new world we're living in, to turn the next page, to drive the next part of the journey. And I was very disillusioned with government. Like none of the business I've ever done in my past, not to say it won't happen in the future, but none of the business I've done had been with government. And there was all the stuff that you hear in the media, corruption and what, all of that. I was always like, not my life, not about that. And I was like, I want to do something. So she comes up and she's like, political party, and what is it called?
Is it ACP?
Oh
yeah.
Ahan. Right.
Era.
Shade, wow. Era, really. So I get excited because I'm like, I want to articulate the challenge of our generation. And I know that there are people who are feeling the same way. Like if, political emancipation was the first one, electoral challenge, that was the first one. Now it's about how do we have wealth, right? So it comes up, but I feel like the other forces that are trying to have the conversation, I don't quite relate on the values level with them. I'm like, more, right?
You're not trying to win overall.
No, it's not even the overall. I'm not trying to wear the overall capital chapter Gucci and make other people wear it, but
Okay.
That's my thing. Right?
Okay. And you were saying shade?
No, I'm just being honest. I'm calling a spade a spade. And that whole thing plays out. Next thing, there's kisses by the airport or whatever it is that happened. And I'm like, what's going on? I was ready. I was gonna be a part of Akhan. That was my intention.
Yes.
And to contribute, not necessarily politically, but like to be a part of whatever wherever I could fit in. It comes and goes. But I'm still having the same conversation with friends. How do we move the needle forward? How do we move it forward? It's, the African National Congress and that coalition as a whole did their part. Maybe those guys are tired. What's of it? And we see all of the youth league learning and what do we do? How do we come into the game? We should probably start our own. Bubbles around. But how do you start a political party? Bubbles around. I forget it. Go on. I have to do it day to day. Put bread on the table. I get a call from Kanthan Priya, who I worked with.
Kanthan from YFM?
Yeah, from YFM. So Kanthan is one of the founders of ZACP. And long story cut short, we sit down for lunch. We talk about this idea that he sows. And what resonated with me were two things. One, that there were a lot of young people involved, or he was intending to involve a lot of young people in this because he wanted there to be ownership. But then it had a very solutions-orientated mandate, which was that we're not going to be an anti-party. We're not going to be, the DA. The idea was that we were going to come up with 10 issues that we can solve in our country, propose solutions for them, and rally support from the public to solve those problems, and also inspire the public to have a sense of ownership as well, of those problems. And we're going to use new tech, we're going to use different ways of thinking, and that's what ZACP was. The capitalist part of it was more speaking to the fact that there is nothing wrong in having a profit-driven mandate. Government is an organization, and any organization that is designed around the idea that it's okay to lose resources is not going to be efficient, right? And so it was like, we've all got business backgrounds, entrepreneurial, etc. At different levels, it was different mix. But we're going to run this thing so well. We're going to run the parts of the country that we can get our hands on so well, and it'll make a big difference in the country, and so forth and so on. And so that's how I became part of ZACP.
So that never motivated by the fact that initially you wanted to be politicians jumping out of state.
I'm sure maybe it had something to do with it. It was serendipity, I thought. I thought it was like, okay, maybe this thing is coming full circle, it's coming back, I was like,
Okay, so we are about to wrap up because we're going overboard.
Yeah.
And there's just still so much because your story is just so fascinating. Maybe we'll come back for part two.
Happy to do it. Thank you for the platform, by the way. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the platform.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this part of the show, there's a part. This is a segment where I like to say, from my lips to your ears, and this part is where you leave parting words that which we're hoping. So this is your podium moment.
Yeah.
Your I have a dream. Make it count. Because
No
one
pressure.
day,
The files are going to be pulled out.
one day, someone's going to be like, Katlego once said, Katlego Kidiboni.
By the way, my second name is not Kiriboni, can the record state. Kiriboni.
Once said, ... So what is that one thing that your parting words which you'd like to leave to somebody who's listening, who's watching, who's at their worst, or someone, they've lost it, or they are planning on grabbing the world, but they're afraid of taking the next step?
Sure. I'm all for it.
Okay. I'm on that ultra level.
Yeah, no. Just in pressure. Okay.
Remember this KPI.
Okay. I'd say two things. The first is this, that you are enough. Just as you are enough. You have something to offer to the world. You have no business questioning if you are enough. If there are people around you that don't reflect that to you, you have no business being around them. You were born as you were to serve a purpose. And I'm not talking purpose in some grandiose way, but simply that the fact that you came to this earth means that you are here to do something. And your thing could be the smallest of things, or it could be the grandest of things. But the point is, you don't need somebody to tell you that you're enough. Even me saying this is probably silly in that sense, but you're enough. Do not look for validation from others. You know, our world has gone through this thing called coronavirus. And with it have come things like layoffs, and you know, those layoffs have implications in people's homes. If you're sitting at home right now and you've lost your job and you're thinking, you know what, I'm not enough as a father, maybe I'm not enough as a mother or a wife or a partner, whatever the context might be, I'm telling you this because maybe you're the person who needs to hear it. You are enough. You're enough just as you are. Be loving, be kind to yourself, give of yourself to yourself and to the world, and things will eventually turn around. But don't ever look to be validated by the world outside. You know, we live, and I think I might have said this before, we live in a world of Instagram versus Inagram. Like I love Instagram, it's got purpose and it serves what it serves, but Inagram matters more to me. Because it's one thing to like people's likes or like them for what they show you, but I want you to like me for what I truly am like me for my substance, my purpose, and we've moved away from that as a society. At least we don't value it as much anymore. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is congratulations. Congratulations, because you are here. You're standing. Whether you're standing and limping and leaning, or you are running, or you are doing leaps and bounds, the point is congratulations, you're here. And give yourself credit for all the things that you have gone through and gone past. You know, Tshiamo, we have these moments and these platforms where people who might have accomplished a certain thing are profiled, right? And we love their story because it gives us a sense of hope. We forget our story. We forget our biography. You've gone through your struggle. And if ever there's one that you can believe because you lived it, is yours. So turn the page back once in a while. It's a Thursday as we record this. Hey man, throw back to your Thursday 5 years ago when you were going through the most. Or when you were doing great things. Because sometimes you don't have to reference when it was hard. We have to reference when it was good, when we had won, because that's what we need to see now. So congratulations for being where you are. Congratulations for fighting on. Congratulations for waking up. Some people choose not to wake up. Congratulations for trying to be the best version of yourself. And then the last thing I'd say to you is that... Thank you. Thank you for listening to my nonsense. Because I was supposed to do 2, I've now done 3. So therefore, all I can say is thank you. And that's it.
Is that thank you to me or thank you? It's part of your...
Oh no, I was just saying thank you. But yes, you can make it deeper. Thank you to yourself. Thank you to yourself. Thank you to yourself.
Thank you so much. Oh, the question, what are your thoughts on the title?
The title?
For this podcast.
Which title? The
name? Yes.
Or the name of this episode or the show?
The name of this...
Man with a Plan?
Yes.
Oh, Man on a Plan?
Man on a Plan.
I think it's a great movie title. Come in this song.
Who would you have to
play me? Me? It'd be a bad movie, I'm telling you now, because I'm a bad actor, right? But...
Did you not... I mean...
Okay, fine. On a serious note, who would I have?
I was thinking you were going to say Denzel Washington. I'm like, oh, I really feel like
Don Cheadle.
He's the best. Don Cheadle is...
Hotel Rwanda?
Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible actor. Yeah.
Are you sure not?
I don't like where this is going.
Salma. What's the name?
What's her name? Oh, come on.
Nigerian guy.
Walking across bridges.
I
don't know enough of his body of work. He hasn't been in my role.
No, I'm looking like in terms of like representation. Like for me to, if I'm looking at you and I look at him, I'm like, hi.
Okay, from a visual aesthetic.
Yeah, visual aesthetic. Yeah.
Not that I can.
But
not that it matters. Anyway,
Anyway,
isn't your show done? I feel like your show is done.
So yeah, with that said, thank you so much for joining me in studio for giving us so much. This is literally just part 1. We have to have a part 2 because your story is fascinating.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So all the best. You're still listening or watching the Transcript with me, Tshiamo, right here on your media. Hashtag where you are.
You are creating an impression. Make sure it's an impression by design. This is the Transcript with Tshiamo.
Your media, where you are.